It was a little past 1 in the morning. The back alley still breathing heat from the kitchen behind us, and I had just told the woman who'd spent 3 years trying to ruin my life that I was leaving at the end of the month. She had her knife in one hand. She always had her knife, even out there. Even on a milk crate at 1 a.m., and she set it down on the crate very slowly, like she didn't trust what she'd do with it, and then she reached out and grabbed my forearm, hard, the way you grab someone going over a railing. "You can't leave," she said. "Not you shouldn't. Not the kitchen needs you. Just, you can't." Like it was a law of physics I was personally violating. I had spent 3 years memorizing the small constellation of burn scars on that exact forearm, the one now clamped around mine, and I had told myself the whole time it meant nothing that I knew them by heart. Standing in that alley with her hand locked on me, I finally ran out of places to put the lie. "My name is Theo Hargrove. I'm 34. I'm a line cook, chef de partie, if you want the title that comes with no money, which means I spend 12 hours a day on a rubber mat in front of a flat top that could brand a cow, turning out plates that strangers photograph and forget by dessert. It's a brutal life, and I'm good at it," which are not unrelated facts. I had a studio apartment I used mostly for sleeping, a back that clicked, a freezer with nothing in it but coffee and ice, and the specific loneliness of a man who's surrounded by people 16 hours a day and known by none of them. I wasn't lonely. I just decided that being needed during a Saturday rush was close enough to being loved that I'd stopped checking the difference. Then there was Ren. Her name was Renata, but no one had called her that since culinary school. On the line she was Ren, 2 letters, the length of an order. She ran the station next to mine, garde-manger to my grill, which meant we shared a corner of stainless steel and a single ticket rail and absolutely nothing else, willingly. She cooked like she was settling a personal grudge with the ingredients. She had a knife she'd had for 9 years, the handle wrapped and rewrapped in fraying blue tape, and she guarded it like a relic and could break down a case of chickens with it faster than I could find my gloves. And up the inside of her left forearm ran a scatter of pale old burn scars, the kind every cook collects, except I had somehow ended up knowing the map of hers. We were hired the same week. That was the original sin. The chef, a man who ran his kitchen like a cockfight because he thought pressure was the same thing as teaching, put 2 new cooks on one station and told us only one of us was staying, and then he kept us both. For 3 years, because he figured out that 2 people trying to destroy each other plate faster than 2 people at peace. So we warred. Over the rail, over the walk-in, over whose sauce went on the special, over a stock pot, over nothing. She told me I cooked like a man trying to impress a judge who'd already left. I told her she plated like she was angry at the plate. We were each a little right, which is the worst way to be wrong about somebody you stand 12 inches from for 12 hours a day. I told myself I was quitting for the job. There was a real one. A sous gig at a new place 2 cities over. More money, my own section. A clean start in a town where nobody had watched me lose to Ren for 3 years. That's what I told the chef. That's what I told myself. Repeatedly, the way you repeat the safe version of a story until the dangerous version underneath it stops trying to surface. I never let myself finish the other sentence, the true one, that I was leaving because standing next to her every night, wanting her and fighting her in the same breath, had become a thing I could no longer carry and keep my face straight. You can learn a lot about a man from the moves he calls a fresh start. The night I told her, we'd just survived the worst Saturday of the season. It had been 400 covers, a printer that wouldn't stop spitting tickets, a reach-in that died at the worst possible hour, 2 no-shows on the dish pit, and a private party that ordered like they were trying to bankrupt us out of spite. Ren and I had run that line shoulder to shoulder for 6 hours in a heat that warps your sense of time, calling behind and corner and all day at each other, hands moving faster than thought, two enemies operating as one organism, because the alternative was the whole night going down in flames. By the time the last plate walked, the kitchen looked like a battlefield and smelt like one. And the two of us were the last cooks standing, soaked through, hollowed out, riding the strange flat high you get when you've spent everything you had. We broke down our stations in silence. And then I followed her out the back to the alley, where the cooks sat on milk crates to come down off a service, and I sat next to her in the heat, pouring out the prop door, and the city was cold and quiet above us. And I told her, because she was the only person in that building I owed the truth, that I'd given my notice and I was gone in 3 weeks. I watched it land. For 1 second, her face did nothing at all, which from Ren was the loudest possible reaction. Then she set her knife down on the crate, slow, and grabbed my arm, and told me a law of physics. You can't leave. And here's the thing that sat wrong that I carried home and couldn't put down. She didn't argue the job. She didn't ask about money or the city or the hours. A rival fights you on the facts. She didn't reach for a single fact. She just held my arm in the heat and the dark like the facts had never been the point. I told myself, walking home, that it was the service talking. You finish a night like that and you'd grab a stranger's arm. The adrenaline makes everything feel like the last lifeboat. I told myself she meant the kitchen, that she didn't want to break in a new grill cook, didn't want to lose the only person who could keep her pace, that you can't leave was a staffing complaint dressed up by exhaustion. I am very good at telling myself things. 3 years of pretending I felt nothing for Ren had made me a craftsman at it. But I lay on my bed not sleeping, the way you don't sleep after a service even when your body is begging, and I kept feeling the exact pressure of her hand, and I finally let the true sentence finish itself. The one I'd been seasoning around for 3 years. I'm not leaving for the job. I'm leaving because I can't stand next to her 1 more year wanting this and calling it a rivalry. It arrived whole, fully plated, like it had been sitting in the past the entire time waiting for someone to pick it up. I had 3 weeks left. They did not go the way 3 weeks of war should have gone. The fighting didn't stop. We wouldn't have known how to talk without it, but the temperature underneath it changed, the way a stock changes when you finally pull it off the boil. She started covering me. A grill cook gets buried, it happens, and the old Ren would have let me drown and enjoyed the view. The new Ren started quietly reaching over and firing my garnishes, plating my sides, buying me 30 seconds I hadn't asked for, and daring me with her eyes to say a single word about it. So I didn't. I started doing the same for her, and we ran that line for 3 weeks like 2 people diffusing the same bomb, and neither of us mentioned that we'd stopped trying to blow each other up. There were tells everywhere once I knew to look. She knew how I took my coffee on a double, light, too much sugar, the cook's apology to your own body, and one brutal Friday a cup of it just appeared at my station. No note, no eye contact, and she body-checked me into the lowboy when I tried to thank her. She started showing up for prep early, my shift, which was not her shift, and pretending she had paperwork that did not exist. And I started reinterpreting 3 years of war, the way you reread a letter after you find out who really sent it. There was the night 2 summers back when I'd cut my hand open deboning in a hurry, a real one. Blood in the mice bad, and Ren, who had spent that entire week trying to get my lamb dish pulled from the menu, had wrapped my hand herself, fast and rough and certain, cursing me out the whole time for being careless, and then worked my station and hers for the rest of the night without once mentioning it again. I'd filed it under she didn't want to plate short. I pulled the file back out now and read it correctly. There was the time I'd made the regional shortlist and she'd told the whole kitchen it was rigged, loudly, for a week. And then I'd found, taped inside my locker where only I'd see it, the clipping about it. Smooth, flat, no note. I'd told myself a dishwasher did it as a joke. No dishwasher in the history of dish pits has ever clipped a newspaper. There was the walk-in, too. One afternoon I came in for cream and found her already in there, leaning against the shelving in the cold with her eyes shut, just breathing, the way you do when the floor gets to be too much. And she heard the door, and her eyes snapped open, and for 1 second, before the armor came back up, she looked at me like I was something she was about to lose and hadn't yet figured out how to keep. Then she said, "You're letting the cold out. Genius," and shoved past me. And I stood in the walk and holding cream I no longer remembered wanting. Even Dom said something. Dom ran the pass, had been in kitchens since before either of us was born, saw everything, and said almost nothing. He caught me watching Ren break down a case one evening, and he said, around his unlit cigarette, 3 years you two been doing this dance. You really gonna let the song end 'cause you're scared of the last step? And then he called order fire like he hadn't just filleted me on my own line. It broke open on my second to last night, after close, in the empty kitchen. Everyone else had gone. The line was down, the hoods off, the only sound the compressor's humming and a tap dripping somewhere in the dish pit. Ren was wiping down her station that didn't need wiping, and I was sharpening my knives that didn't need sharpening. And we were both clearly doing maintenance on equipment as an excuse to be the last two in the building. And we both knew it. And neither of us left. I came around to put a pan back on her side, and we ended up standing close in the dead quiet kitchen, the steel still ticking as it cooled, and neither of us moved. Her blue-taped knife was on the board between us. Her sleeves were pushed up and the old burned scars on her forearm caught the low light. I have spent my whole working life knowing exactly how long to leave a thing on the heat, exactly when it's ready, reading doneness by feel in a fraction of a second, in the dark, blindfolded by steam. I could not, standing there, have told you whether the moment between us was ready or whether I'd ruin it by reaching. It was the one thing I'd ever cooked that I had no instinct for. The compressors cycled and went quiet. The tap dripped. I could hear her breathing, and then I could hear my own. And the whole enormous kitchen, 40 feet of stainless, 8 burners, a walk-in that had heard everything, narrowed down to the 18 inches between her hand on the board and mine. I noticed her thumb move once over the frayed tape on her knife handle, the way it did when she was about to say something she hadn't decided to say yet. I noticed she hadn't told me to get off her station. In 3 years, she had never once let me stand this long on her station. She broke it first. She always would. I've been trying to figure out for 3 years why I can't be in this kitchen when you're not in it, she said, to the cutting board, not to me. I told myself I just liked beating you, that it was about the work, that you made me faster, and that's all it was. Her hand found the taped handle of her knife and gripped it, the way some people grip a steering wheel to keep their hands from shaking. Then you said you were leaving, and I grabbed your arm before my brain caught up, and I heard myself say you can't, and I thought, there it is. There's the thing I've been pretending was about sauce for 3 years. She finally looked up. I don't want a quieter kitchen, Theo. I want the loud one. The one with you in it. That landed. 3 years of war, and it took one quiet kitchen at 2 a.m. to undo me. I went still. My throat closed, and I made myself wait, because the body knows before the mouth, and I wanted to mean the next thing more than I'd ever meant anything over that pass. And then I did the hardest thing. I gave her the out, all the way open. Ren, I can still go. The job's real. The city's real. and we can leave all of this right here on the board and never pick it up again. You can tell yourself I quit for the money. I'll be a guy you used to beat. Nobody ever has to know either of us said a true thing at 2 in the morning. I held her eyes. I mean it. You decide this, not me. I've spent 3 years getting very good at swallowing it. I can swallow it one more time and get on the road, and you'd never have to carry it. She didn't take it. She set the knife down, both hands free now, which from Ren was the entire confession, and she stepped into the foot of cold air between us. I'm so tired of calling it a rivalry, she said, and her voice cracked clean through on the last word. Something in me came up to temperature, finally, all the way through. I'm not leaving for the job, I said. The compressors hummed, and I kept going. I told the chef that. I told myself that for 3 weeks. It's a lie. I'm leaving because I've stood 12 inches from you for 3 years wanting exactly this and calling it competition, and I didn't think I could do another year of it without saying something I couldn't take back, so I figured I'd run to another city instead. Which, now that I'm saying it out loud, is the most coward thing a grown man has ever cooked up. When something goes right on the line, you're the first face I look for. When it goes wrong, it's still you. I memorized the burns on your arm 3 years ago and lied about why. I don't want the quiet kitchen either. I never did. I wanted the one with you yelling corner at me until we're both too old to lift a pan. Her eyes went bright and completely unguarded, the armor gone. 3 years of it on the floor with the rest of the night, and she made a sound that was half a laugh and half the other thing, and she reached up and fisted her hand in my chef's coat, right over the buttons, and pulled me down those last 12 inches, and kissed me in the cold, quiet kitchen, with the steel still ticking around us. And then the ancient ticket printer at the pass, which had been off for an hour, gave a death rattle and spat out one final ticket onto the floor, loud as a gunshot in the empty room. We both jumped. Ren looked at it, then at me, breathing hard. "If that's a foretop," she said, "I'm walking into traffic." I went and picked it up. It was a printer error, a single line of garbage characters, except at the very bottom, by pure machine accident, it had printed one real word from some old cached order: stay. I held it up so she could read it. "Even the printer," I said. "The printer's been on my side for years," she said. "It just couldn't grab your arm." I did not take the job 2 cities over. I called them the next morning from the alley on a milk crate and turned it down, and then I went inside and worked the line, and Dom looked at the 2 of us standing too close at the pass and said, "About time," and called order fire, and that was the whole ceremony. 3 months later, her blue-tape knife lived in my roll more nights than not, because she trusted me with it, which in our language was further than "I love you," and we both knew it. We still fought over the special. We still called behind and corner at each other across a station we now shared on purpose. The only thing that changed was that the war had a different engine under it. We weren't trying to outlast each other anymore. We were just 2 people who'd finally admitted the loud kitchen was the one we both wanted to die in. A year after that, we left the cockfight together and put every dollar we had into a small 20-seat place of our own. 1 line, 1 pass. No chef breathing down anybody's neck. On the opening night, when the first ticket printed, and my hands went cold the way they still do, she reached over without looking and gripped my forearm. Right over the spot she'd grabbed in the alley, and said, "You can't leave," and grinned, and I have shown up every single service since. Years later, when people ask how the 2 of us got together, and they always ask, because we hated each other across a hotline for 3 years is a better story than most. She tells the version where I tried to flee the state to avoid my own feelings, and she physically stopped me. I tell the version where a woman who fought me over everything for 3 years set her knife down and grabbed my arm, and accidentally said the truest thing either of us had ever said in that building. We argue about it during prep. We will argue about it forever. It's the closest thing to a love letter either of us knows how to write. Nothing about us ever really changed. She's still settling a personal grudge with the ingredients. I still cook like I'm trying to impress somebody, except now I know exactly who, and she's standing 12 inches away. The only difference is that when she grabs my arm now, I don't pretend it means nothing. It was never new, the thing between us. It had been standing in the past the whole time, plated, getting cold, waiting 3 years for one of us to be brave enough to call it. So, what would you have done if your rival of 3 years grabbed your arm and told you that you couldn't leave? Would you have stayed, or would you have driven to the next city like I almost did? And have you ever fought someone every single day because fighting was the only way you knew how to stay close to them? Tell me your story down in the comments. If this one found you tonight, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.